of your career last night. Just what has it been like when you've gotten those opportunities to step into the starting lineup this year?
It's good. I feel like I bring more energy, and I come ready to play.
The coaching staff has talked about, wanting you to be a little bit more aggressive offensively and try to find your looks within the offense. What's that process been like for you so far this season?
Just watching film and trying to, talk through it and implement it in the game, work on it in practice, and when I see the opportunities in the game, go for it.
How much do you feel yourself kind of growing in that area so far?
I feel like I'm getting better at it. Just working on playing on the catch more and finding my shots.
Because one thing it seems like you have a pretty good feel for is like when you cut, you're still looking other places. Like if a guy's in the corner and you're on the baseline, sometimes you even turned around and made a pass to the wing. Is that something that's natural for you to be looking all over the floor as you're driving?
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of people that's in the paint when I catch it a lot of the time. So I feel like somebody's bound to be open. So I feel like their open shot might be better than my contested shot.
What for you as a young guy, you guys haven't had a chance to practice much lately. And Chet was talking the other night about sometimes you know what you need to work on, but you're just not getting a whole bunch of time in the gym to work on things. You're going to get a little bit more this upcoming week. What's the value in that for you guys?
It's big, so we can get together and work on the stuff that we're talking about. We can talk about it, but sometimes it's easier to walk through it instead of just talking.
Were you ready for Shea to throw that behind the back pass to you in transition?
I was expecting him to pass it, but I didn't know how he was, so I say yes and no.
Okay. What was it like getting the Rising Stars news? Was that cool to find out that you're going?
Yeah, that was fun. My family and friends were all happy for me, and it was a good moment.
Would you rather be on a team with Chet and Dub, or would you like to compete against them?
I definitely want to be on the team with them. We could have a little more fun and freedom.
Dub and Isaiah are both still out tomorrow as an update.
Darko is obviously leading this Toronto team, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on the impact that he had here and what it's like to see him have this opportunity.
Yeah, very happy for him. Very well deserved. He is he loves basketball. He's just a complete basketball junkie. When he worked here, I always was like, man, I wish I loved basketball as much as Darko does, because then I'd probably be a better coach than I am. But just junkies, watches EuroLeague games, loves talking about the game. He's just got boundless energy, as I'm sure everybody there is seeing. I replaced him as the blue coach, and he moved up to the staff here. And then I worked alongside him in the summertime and with their staffs for a long period of time while he was an assistant here. So great guy, well-deserved. He's doing a good job.
He used to do some kind of unorthodox things in player development, especially a guy like Steven Adams. I remember some stories. How do you feel like that role, the player development role that he had, was maybe a platform for him and other guys here in OKC?
Yeah, I mean, he's the thing that he has that I think good player development coaches have is he cares as much about the player's game as the player does. And I think that's like a very key ingredient to building trust with players. Is like this is their life, this is their career. Their window to play basketball is limited, both because it's hard to stay in the NBA, but even if you're in the NBA for the longest possible time, it's just a sliver of your overall life. And so the stakes are high for every single player because of that. And I think they want people, in it with them that care as much as they do. And that's a quality that I always admired in him. It's like he's thinking about it as much as the players are. He's trying to turn over every rock to help players improve, both from a technical standpoint and also from an interpersonal standpoint. So that was always, I thought, one of his strongest qualities.
Question from a reader, and I was so curious, I was so interested in it, and I wanted to ask you about it. He was asking about communication on the court and how much the way players communicate is tied to just their personalities, and how much of it is you have to push certain guys to do it more. Like, how is the process of getting guys to be communicative on the court?
Yeah, I think there's two types of communication. Some is like protocol, and some of it is like interpersonal. So I think separating those two out is important. Calling a pick and roll when the pick and roll is happening, or talking in transition, or communicating spots on the floor on offense, or getting matched up on the free throw line. Like at the end of the game the other night when Denver's trying to go full court, we have to make sure we're matched. In those situations, like, your personality doesn't matter. You have to get that job done, so that's like protocol, that's process, that's fulfilling the needs of the team on a given possession. And then there's interpersonal communication, which is way more geared towards personality. And that's where guys have different communication styles. Guys have different appetites for communication. Interpersonal communication, I think, is particularly challenging with younger teams because guys are trying to find their own games, their own voices. They're still forming. We have, I think, a team that is advanced in that way. For our team's age and experience level, they tend to communicate pretty well. I'll look over at the bench during a timeout and they're talking to each other. And they want to talk to each other, and that's important because there's a lot of problems that we have to solve, and there's a lot of adversities, and we want to be a team that works through them together. And we have a group of guys that have shown a pretty good willingness to do that.
So when you talk about interpersonal, so like a protocol thing would be, this is the coverage we're in. An interpersonal thing would be like, hey, on that coverage, you needed to do this.
Yeah, I thought, we mess up a coverage, I call timeout, they come to the bench, they know I'm mad, they're like, why, and then it's just like, I thought you called this, like, no, I didn't call that, they're just working through it, that's the interpersonal part. And that's where I think, the most important, element of that is just the motivation to work through it. It's not going to be perfect. It's never perfect. I think it's fascinating to look at some of the best players in the league and look at their individual circumstances right now, and they're still working through something. They could be first ballot Hall of Famers, and there's still a challenge that's in front of them and something that they need to work through with their team. So it's a never-ending process, and what we're trying to do is develop the tools and the environment for that to happen, not only tomorrow against Toronto, but for a long time.
Is that unique because your guys are so young, but they were here last year, and a lot of these guys you work with the Blue? Is that the reason, or are they just kind of a unique group?
I think a little bit of both. I think they definitely are unique people, good people that root for each other's success, people that want to find solutions, people that when they see a problem, they're not just trying to dissect the problem. They want to also come up with a solution. But we also, for a team as young as we are, we have pretty uncommon continuity. The NBA is so fluid that we all of a sudden become a team that's been together for a couple of years. And so that'll only continue to grow over time. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
You wake up this morning and 4 teams are within 1 game of first place in the Western Conference, and nothing's over yet right now, but towards the mid part of the season, I mean, just talk about how competitive it is right there at the top with a bunch of different teams that, you guys are young, the Clippers a little more veteran, just a bunch of guys doing it different ways, but having a lot of success.
Yeah, the West is always competitive. I would extend the competitiveness of the West far beyond just the top 4 teams today. There is a lot of season left to be looking at the standings for us, at least, just because from this point forward, we're either going to get better or we're going to get worse, and that's just the nature. Every single team's in that situation, and we have a lot of basketball left to play, and we need to be in the category of teams that's constantly getting better, even through the ups and downs that we'll face, in the latter part of the season. And so as we get deeper in the season, the standings become more relevant, but right now we're just trying to stack days, stack games, and then at some point we'll look up, see where we are, and play it from there.
We talked about practice yesterday and the limitations on practice. Do you think, with older teams, sometimes you'll hear a team say these guys don't have to practice a lot. They've formed more habits in the league and stuff like that. Is it maybe more important for guys at this stage that they get that chance in practice?
Yeah, I think the people's philosophies on that with older teams would be different too. I wouldn't make that assumption for every older team. There's teams or coaches or organizations that, they're still going pretty good. I think it's good for chemistry, which for a younger team I think is important. And when I say chemistry, it's not just like camaraderie chemistry, but like the on-court chemistry of Kenrich Williams and Lou Dort are going to be switching partners and pick and rolls, and they need to know that the other one is going to call the coverage and, how they're going to call it and how they're going to switch. Those types of things get worked out in practice and in shoot-arounds. and then I also think there's a rhythm element to practicing, and getting an individual rhythm, getting a team rhythm that we missed, for a lot of January, to be honest with you. And so, like I said, no problem admitting, like, I think we dulled in some of our bread and butter stuff. Just natural erosion, that comes with the season and with a lot of road games and a condensed schedule. And now we practiced today and we'll practice again Monday. We got to tap back into that.
Coach, you talked about Cason sneakily becoming a little bit more dynamic offensively. What's the process like for a guy who's so functional offensively like Cason is, to helping him kind of find the right opportunities on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like an assessment phase with every player, where we come in and we just emphasize kind of the foundational stuff environmentally, offensively, defensively, habit-wise. And then we kind of, see where they are, at about this time, like midway through the season. It's like, all right, we've now done a half a year with him. Here's what we've learned. Here's what he's learned. He's out there. Like, where do you think you can improve? Where, what's coming easily for you? What do you think you can do that you're not doing? What's more difficult for you? We have those observations, and then we form a plan to start to progress from there. A lot of his stuff, as I've mentioned, is like his secondary playmaking, like on the catch, if he's not open for a shot, being able to hit the paint and finish, hit the paint and extend plays, hit the paint and spray to the perimeter, which he has good instincts for. So now it's a matter of getting there a little bit more.
All these Kentucky guards are really good in the league. Is there one thread between all those guys that program that makes them successful?
Brett might have a better answer than me on that, but my impression of that, I was at Florida for 4 years, and they're in the league. And I was always really amazed at the level of pressure that exists in that program, just because of the national attention and expectations and the fan base and media market specifically. Like, those players at a very young age are under like real pressure to perform. And when that team, wins by 5 instead of 20, or they lose 2 games in a row, the sky's falling and they have to endure that. And I always was impressed with players from that program's ability to do so. And so I think there's a preparation element that just a few college programs can give you in that sense, and Kentucky's one of them.
You talked about the protocol communication earlier. Is there a player that you've been around who was like the best at that? Like,
no, but like I'll never forget. When I was the G League coach my first year, Sam was like, "Hey, I want you to sit behind the bench so you can just like feel the NBA game and feel like the bench environment," which was really helpful for me. So I was sitting at the end of the bench. Scott Brooks was the head coach, and I was like down towards the end of the bench. And I remember one of the first games I went to was against the Clippers, and DeAndre Jordan was their starting center. And I was like floored at how much the guy was communicating. I mean, it was every possession and constant. And now he at that point was like in his prime. He had been in the league, so he'd seen the pictures, but he was calling out stuff that didn't even have to do with him. He was basically quarterbacking the defense. Garnett was like that too. Like, those guys had an unbelievable like motor to talk through possessions. A lot of it was because they were experienced and had seen things, coming. And so I think that comes with time. We're trying to put like the building blocks in for that. But those two guys stand out. But that experience for me was the first time I was like, wow, this is an impressive level of talk here.
Chet kind of unprompted last night talked about Shea being good at that, just at calling out things on the defensive end. That's something he's always been good at. Has he grown in that area?
No, I think it's come with time. I think it's come with time and experience. And he's starting, the game slows down. The league doesn't change, and so it's really hard at the beginning because everything's new, and you're drinking from a fire hose. But it's patterned. The game is patterned. The best players this year are basically the best players next year, and basically there's very little turnover with the best players in the league. And so you learn the league, you learn the patterns, you learn the players, you learn the rhythms of the season, you learn the games, and the guys that go through that over and over and over again, that have their eyes open like Shea, they improve at it, and then they can pass that wisdom along, to the team.
Sam William the talker.
Who?
J-Will.
Yeah, big time.
Is that what you guys saw?
He's a barker. He barks. He barks stuff out. Barks stuff out. Speaking of barking,
that's all right, guys.
anything for Dub.